Hello, in this video, now that we've made a Thornode and we've put it in standby state, at this point it's currently active, we'll go through that. I want to go through more details around what you need to know as a Thornode operator, some of the considerations and not only things to know, but things you really should be doing. I've got a bit of a cheat list here, cheat sheet to say, we're going to go through the make status, explain a bit more information on that, looking at make help and some of the common commands you should know, as well as upgrading and some of the considerations of whether you're in the active standby or whatever state you should do and how that would affect your bond. Getting specific information for better decision making as a node operator, and then thinking about your bond with respect to the incentive pendulum, knowing how much bond I should be including, given we're at a really interesting point where we've got 30 nodes in ChaosNet and there's a bit of a wait list to get churned in. So we're going to go through make status first and we'll just jump into it. So this is my testnet node. We're on testnet here and I know that I'm active, I'm churned in. I want to go through every line first. So at the top, we've got this fantastic, it's been around for a while actually, nice saying of Thornode. We've got the address. So this is the Thornode address, like my Thornode. Every Thornode has an individual address for itself, and this happens to be mine. So this is really important to know. We have the IP, so this is the IP we got with make set IP once we deployed our Thornode. This is the version, and this is a good to know what version you're on, because they might post a version 16 and you need to know what version you're on as well. And we'll go through some more information on that. My status is active, which means I'm currently churned in, I'm currently active in the network. I'm not in standby or I'm not inactive. I haven't got a request to leave or left the network or anything. I'm actively churned in and witnessing transactions. That's my bond amount. That's my reward. So I get a block reward within as an active churned in node, and that's what my current award is. Now rewards usually a bit better in actual ChaosNet because transactions are happening. There's not a huge deal from what I know happening in testnet at the moment as they're building the BDC integration. These are my slash points. So if I was to not witness transactions, I would get slashed and put in jail. So that hasn't happened yet, which has been good. This is the current vault address where I need to stake my bond. It's a proof of stake system. Look up proof of stake. And this is my preflux message. So ready, reason, okay. So everything's looking good. If there's problems here, like you might not be ready because you haven't got enough bond, you've requested to leave the network, or some other reason why you have some error, that's where that information is in the pre-flight. So these are a couple of the URLs that you will have for your API RPC and midgard. These are quite helpful. We'll be using at least one of these in this video. Then we've got the synchronization status for the chain. So we've got the Thornode sync and the binance sync and the current block height. You can go to testnet and have a look at the block height here, and that should match this number. As an example. So, if we had more on like Ethereum and Bitcoin and whatever else, then this chain list will increase as more and more get integrated. So it's pretty cool stuff. So let's make status. It's good to know how to read this, how to understand it, how to look at some of the error information and know where to look for. So you really understand what you're looking at when you're at make status. So the make, there's lots of commands that we've already used within make, and there's also make help. Now this has a lot of really good commands, and some of them we've already run previously. So make help, just ran that. When you do a make tools here, you install a lot of different things like Helm, log management, a lot of monitoring tools as well. So a lot of them kind of get run. A lot of the make tools or the make commands are shortcuts, and they can be shortcuts on shortcuts as well. The ones I want to concentrate as I move down this list is obviously we've got destroy tools, and that would undeploy the tools, which is really something you don't want to do. We'll start to destroy your node. I want to have a look at mnemonic. So this is essentially your mnemonic phrase that you need to record and back up. This is essentially your private key, in a way to back up your private key. So I want to look at this command, your mnemonics. This is going to be essentially your private key and how to retrieve your private key for your Thornode if anything happens. So if you're running a live ChaosNet node, you would really, really want to back this up. So let's go have a look at this. So why would you do this? This is if something happens to your node. This is essentially to reconstruct the private key for that node address, or otherwise you're going to lose control over your bond. So that is my mnemonic phrase for my particular node, and I would obviously, if this is a real one, backing this up, put this somewhere safe, so record this somewhere safe so that I can retrieve it if anything would happen to my node, it would be compromised or there's some catastrophic event and I needed to reconstruct it. So that's one that needs, as a node operator, you need to do, and it's talked about a lot on the dev chat. Password is another one. Now, when you do make ChaosNet validator, then you would be prompted to put a password in for ChaosNet. So you would need to record that or understand what that is, and this would obviously give that back to you. Should have recorded it when you created your ChaosNet node. However, if for some reason you don't have that, then this can be used in order to get that back. These two pieces of information really should be backed up, recorded securely. Think of it like your mnemonic phrase on your Bitcoin address or stuff like that, or your Binance address. You will need to be backing that up. Pretty simple stuff, really. Let's have a look at some more. If we go through more, so we've got ChaosNet validator. So this is what you would run to deploy your Thornode in ChaosNet. We run the testnet version of it. We run testnet validator here. So you can reset your midgard and binance chains. It's a bit, you don't really need to do that. I think I saw one or two people on the chat that needed to do that, but that's a command you can do to do that as well. That's how you deploy your, or undeploy, destroy your node. So you would do like a make destroy. There's a process there in leaving, but you would go through make destroy and destroy everything, and then destroy your entire Kubernetes cluster in order to remove your node at the start of the process. Make status we've gone through, and then logs. This is a cool one as well. So make logs will stream out all of the log information if you needed to get that particular information for debugging purposes. I'll show you sort of like a manual way to do that as well. Make help. Then we can get specific logs like Binance Bifrost, that type of thing as well, which I'm going to go through and show I don't want to say normal way, I guess this is a normal way of doing it as well, but to me this is a bit of a shortcut on how to do things. This is generally the most important pod that you have, but let's get a bit more information about all of this. So when you deploy a node, or you've deployed a node and set it up, you've deployed a number of pods. All name spaces, I think that's right. So these are the pods that have been deployed as a part of your node deployment. Let's start from the left. So we have the actual namespace, and you'll see in a lot of the commands inside the help, if I go over here, you'll have -Thornode because that's the namespace. You can set up a default namespace by adjusting your Kubernetes configuration. That's just, I guess save typing -n Thornode all the time. So we have the namespace, then we actually have the pod name itself. We have that whether it's ready, so if it's been deployed multiple times, like this one here, this is perhaps the third iteration of it, the status, amount of restarts, and how long is the uptime essentially for it. So then we have multiple namespaces here, and the primary one you'll generally deal with is Thornode. Other ones to deal with monitoring, log management, and stuff like that. We'll deal with that in a separate video. The main one you want to be doing is Thornode. And you can have a look at the Thornode stack, which is in the documentation, to get more information about what each one does. The main one, I guess from a Thornode point of view, with regarding to witnessing transactions and signing transactions is this one here. So now we have this information, we can go again -n for node and get just the pods that are running within the Thornode namespace. So now we've got that, we can do specific things around getting more information around these individual pods. So we could do like make logs, or which is really a shortcut for going logs -f, and if I did copy this out, copy, paste, -n. It's really a shortcut for doing that. Now, it's a good shortcut, won't lie, but just understand it's, I guess, a shortcut as well. This applies, this -f is the parameter to the pod name, and the -n is the namespace, since I've got a default namespace configured. If I took this out, it probably wouldn't find it. Yeah, there we go. So let's go back to getting our pods. We can also delete pods. Okay, so I've got a few more commands here, and just before I get into them, I wanted to explain a little bit more about the pod name. So here we say have got the Thor API pod, and it has more information at the end. This is like a unique identifier for the pod. Usually in a whole new deployment, you get this number. And then for a new instance of the pod, if it restarts or whatever, this end part will change. So if you do a delete, it will automatically respawn and you'll get a different number or set of number and letters at the end. So some commands within make or within the Kubernetes CLI, you have to specifically name, and other ones you don't. So so logs, I generally find that I have to name it, whereas other ones we don't. So, delete, to do a delete like this, you'll see this often in upgrades. You would have to do you don't have to specify the name, it's like described for you. But again, in the logs you don't. Describe's a really good one, and that's going to describe the pod. This is really good to get like versioning. So let's go make status. We've got version 0.15 here. And this is like the overall status for the Thornode. However, we can get more information about a specific pod by putting this one in. And it's going to give us all this information, which is what else? I've seen this in the chat. Piping this into grep is, I just copied actually why I put that in there. Piping it into grep, which is like a find, and then looking for image, gets you the version of each image. So here we can, version 15.15. So that's good. This helps for additional debug information. This, along with the log information, might help, particularly if you've got something like this is version 14 and this is version 15. That's that's not good. That's not what you want. So there's just some more tools to get more information. Then, yeah, you can delete pods. You can delete pods. You can run make validator, make chaosnet, testnet validator as many times as you want. It's not really going to affect it. I'll get to our point on deleting pods in a minute. There's just one more command I wanted to talk about. Right, the last one I wanted to talk about starts to get into the versioning part. So that's a pull. So you can do something like make pull testnet validator. Now, what does that do? That is just literally a shortcut for git pull, then make test validator, and the rest of it, make testnet validator, whatever. It's important when there's an update that you get the latest from the repository, and that's a git pull. And then you go through and you do the relevant upgrade steps. Usually that's posted in an announcement within the dev Telegram channel. But you always need to ensure you're getting the latest when you're doing a version upgrade, because that's usually how it comes through. But the make pull testnet validator or make pull chaosnet validator, if you're a chaosnet node operator, will essentially do that git pull for you. If there's any doubt, do it manually, and then you'll have no doubt about what's happening there. So this is where versioning becomes like really interesting, because when I've got, if I do an upgrade, my pod is going to go offline for a small amount of time. Well, the Thornode pod is going to go offline for a small amount of time. That is required in order to do the witness signing of the transactions. And if I miss a witness signing of a transaction, I get slashed and I get put to jail. New namespace. Talking and typing is difficult. So then Thornode operators have a choice. Do I want to go ahead and get slashed and put in jail for upgrading to a version, particularly if it's urgent or ASAP? Or do I want to, I don't want to do that because I don't want to get slashed. Well, the beauty about, one of the cool things about ThorChain is it will look to upgrade itself anyway, and that's part of the churn out process, is to ensure that nodes just don't sit churned in continuously. They get churned out, they get upgraded before they can get in. Also, there will be a majority on the version. So if a Thornode operator decides not to upgrade when one's required, then they can become the minority and actually get kicked within the churning process because they didn't upgrade. Then, as a node operator, you're out on standby or whatever, and you're having to then upgrade and then try and get in. And that may not be easy, particularly if you've got to wait 3 days or whatever the churn time is, and you're not getting any rewards because you didn't decide to upgrade. So there's a bit of a balance. Do I want to take a get jailed or upgrade, get jailed, take some slash points, which are minor, in order to stay active and stay in? Or do I want to try and risk it and get booted out for a whole churn cycle? It's kind of something you want to think about. Generally, reading on the chat, it's better just to take the hit, upgrade if you need to, and move on. So you delete your Thornode pod, do the upgrade, run the process in there, take the hit, get jailed, get the slash points, and then you'll be able to, at least you're in, you're still active, you're still churned in, and you might be in for the, might be the day 1 of 3 or whatever the cycle is, day 1 of 5. At least you stayed in, you're going to get your rewards, and slash points individually aren't worth that much. So that's a real good consideration to sort of think about. If you're in standby, it doesn't really matter that much unless I guess churning is about to happen, because you might go in. But yeah, if you're in standby, not that big a deal. With regards to also versioning, if you're going to do something, there was a bit of a chat on the dev chat regarding upgrading some of the backend stuff within AWS for doing, increasing size and whatever else. You don't want to do anything too funky whilst you've got Bond in the system. So anything outside of the standard instructions for upgrading, which is going to be deleting your pod, getting the latest, deleting the pods, doing a make ChaosNet validator, redeploying the information, and then probably doing a set version or something like that. Anything outside of that, you kind of want to perhaps think about taking your Bond out, as you're high risking your Bond if you kind of go outside and do funky things. You can get yourself in bad situations, which is why it's very important to at least upgrade your Thorchain mnemonic as well as the password, and then knowing that you've also got your own Binance address details updated and backed up and secured as well. Because the minimum bond on ChaosNet now is 250,000 room, which is a lot of money to be messing around with. So that's a little bit about versioning. We've gone through so far getting more information about your Thornode and understanding more about it. Gone through a bit about versioning. Now let's just go a little bit deeper to understand, how do I find the minimum bond amount? How do I find out more information about the network as well? And where do I look to get the specific information within the dashboards? So getting on here, this was some of this debugging information, and I want to look at bonding the right amount. And before we get to this and how do I get to this information, what that means, probably need to explain the incentive pendulum a little bit. And that, I'm going to go to the DeFi. Hopefully we can get to so when we think about the incentive pendulum, it's all about where do the incentives go. It's a set ratio of how much bond to underlying assets needs to be in the system. And it's like 66 to 33. 66 room to 33 of the asset staked. And the bonding is there to secure the underlying asset being staked. You can read more about that within the documentation. So if there's bonding as if we overbond, so node operators are putting too much bond in the system, it becomes inefficient. And then the incentive pendulum will swing towards stakers. So people that are using the BEP swap interface. So rewards will go to stakers because there's essentially too much bond inside of the system, and it's no longer, it's inefficient use of capital, you would say. You're better off taking that extra bond out, what's what they're saying, staking it, putting it into the rune vault or whatever you want to do with it, because it's not getting the maximum amount of benefit as a node operator here. So that's known as inefficient, over bonding, or all those type of things here. So yeah, over bonded, inefficient. Now, on the flip side of that is if there's too much staking getting in here, so it's like we've put all this money into the stake thing through the BEP swap, then the system's going to become insecure because there's not enough bond to secure the underlying assets, hence proof of stake. And this is when ChaosNet launched. It was really important to set the caps. I mean, it was a little frustrating when you wanted to go stake and it says cap limit has been reached, but that was done to ensure that node operators were sufficiently securing the network. Else this little efficient thing would have perhaps gone over here, and there would have not been enough bond or room capital to secure the money being staked, and that would have been a very dangerous situation. So those caps were done and lifted at a point when the people had bonded, node operators had bonded sufficient capital in order to ensure the network was safe. So it was done in a very controlled and deliberate manner. So that's a little bit about the incentive pendulum. Hopefully it gives you a bit of understanding without having to read it, but if you're more in-depth and specific information, and the algorithm is on the documentation. So how does that affect us? Well, we want to think about what is actually the min bond, how much bond do I have available to me, and what are some of the conditions of the network. So if we pretend I'm in ChaosNet and I've got a bond and I want to think about, well, churn's going to come, I want to make sure I get into the next churn. What are some things I can do? So we saw that in here, it's efficient. So therefore, whatever the min bond is, we probably don't want to, be putting too much more bond over that. However, one of the considerations is that you will be favored in the next churn if you've got a higher bond than other people. So this is where, for me, it becomes really interesting. You want to bond more than someone else in order to make sure you churn in, but not too much, because then you're becoming inefficient. So where do we find this information? If we go over to, I'm going to change to ChaosNet because the information is not the best in testnet, and then go to nodes and see if this updates for me. I want to go to network, and I want to go to constants. So this information here is the mirror. Look up how to pronounce that and look up the meaning of it. It's quite interesting. This information can actually be found within your Thornode as well through this address. So this is my actual IP address with /v/network at the end. So this has all the information in a REST format. So you can get that information yourself off your own node, or if you don't want to read that because it's difficult, you can get this information off this fantastic dashboard. These are default values. This is what the Thornode team can override in layman's terms. So the min bond in is 1 million by default. That's when mainnet launches, and it's 250,000 bond currently. That's the minimum bond in. So if I was trying to bond in with 30,000 on a ChaosNet, I would get my pre-flight, has not reached minimum bond, get some error message. This is to do with some of the churn cycle rate and stuff like that. But this is the key thing. What's the min bond I need to get in? And if I actually look at testnet, in a previous video, I thought it was 30,000, and then looking at this, I found out it's actually 10,000. So I'm well over bonded inside of testnet, which is why it's inefficient. Well, at least contributes to why it's inefficient. So we have these constants here, which is good to know about. Then if we go to details, we can find out some statistical information. We have some network information here. Bonding ROI, active node count is 31. Interesting fact on that, found out that the max node count, active node count was supposed to be 30, and then the code said it was like 30 plus 1, because the for loop was, the integer in the for loop was 1. Well, it started with 1 instead of 0, it wasn't 0 based. Funny story, moving on. So here we've got the active bonds, and this is what you want to know. Average active bond, 356,000. Max bond, so someone's bonded that amount, min bond, medium bond. So this is really kind of like, well, in the next churn, if I'm just starting as a ChaosNet node operator, or I'm on standby and I want to get back in because whatever reason, this is kind of like the statistics you need to look at, the numbers you need to look at to figure out where you want to get in. So the min bond's 250,000. However, the average bond is 356. So if I would need at least about 350 just to get a chance to get in. But I might decide to go bond 400,000, up the average, just to make sure I get in next time. But then again, is that, should I be doing that? Should I be staking it? Or should I put it in the root vault? Knowing the root vault's going down. Look at the bonding ROI versus the staking ROI, both higher than the root vault. So I don't know, this is one of these really cool and interesting, chaos theory type of things around this decentralized platform about where's the best place to put your capital, and do I up the bond now and be inefficient and then think, well, it's going to last for 3-4 days and maybe I'll get the benefit later and get those block rewards, or should I not go for it and then try and wing it at only like 350 1,000. It's really cool, really interesting stuff. We've got the standby metrics. So min standby bond is 7. That's not gonna cut the mustard, and the max is 420. I mean, like, if that's, this guy's going to get in, likely, or girl is going to get in. So this is like so interesting about what bond are you going to put up to try and get in the next round. So this is a bit of the interesting, I guess, so the thought pattern from a node operator. If I've got a million node on me, sorry, a million rune on me, and you know, I'm thinking, oh, what's the best way to use that within my setup? How much of that should I be putting towards bond? How much of that, should I perhaps not put towards bond, put into another node, or stake it, or whatever you want to do with it? This is the type of area you need to go look at and understand in order to make those decisions. Right. So this brings us probably to the next logical part, is how do I add more bond or remove bond to take profits? Now there is I didn't have this part loaded. However, you can bond more by sending bond to the Thornode address, which is the vault address. Well, you send it to the vault address specifying your Thornode address. And this is what we did last time. If I go to my decks and find out here, we'll just go through that process for anyone that doesn't know or missed it. So the to address is going to be the vault address. The amount to send is obviously the amount of rune I want to send, and the memo is the instruction to the network. Do I want to bond? Do I want to unbond? Or do I want to leave the network if I wanted to leave and shut down my node? So let's just get that information. And because the vault address changes, particularly with like different churn cycles and stuff, you always want to make sure you're getting the latest vault address. Otherwise, you could just be like sending to a burn address, and that's not cool. So I'm going to send just like, where should I set 5,000 because I'm cheap. Obviously, I'm going to have a fee in BNB, so I always need to have some Binance coin available to me. And I've got, kind of enough. And it's worth double checking this, particularly if it was, real rune. I'd be quadruple checking this. But since I'm a big testnet rune whale, I'm not going to be doing that. So that pretty much happens instantly. And there we go, 35,000 is my bond. So there was my bond previously, there's my bond now. That's fantastic. And that's how I can be in. If I was to say min bonded 250,000, I needed to bond an extra 5,000 rune to try and get it, I could do that. And I could do that for an extra 150,000 to get to my 350. Actually, that'd be 400 to get to my 400. Whatever, to get to the amounts that you want to achieve. When looking at these numbers, that's how you add more bond into your node, which gives you more of a chance of churning in the next time. I guess this should be encouraged, because the more this happens, the more this goes up, the more the actual total bond goes up, the higher the limits are going to be. Hashtag raise the caps are going to be on BepSwap.